Hello and welcome to week 2 of the inaugural One Campus, One Book program. Today we're in the brand new Collaborative Learning Center in the Bazell Memorial Library. Last week we discussed the introduction, and this week we're looking at Chapter 1 of the book, which is The Lonely Middle, Why America's Middle Class Continues to Hollow Out. Joining us today is Dr. Wilfred McClay. Dr. McClay is the Blankenship Chair in the History of Liberty and the Director of the Center for the History of Liberty at the University of Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay, so to begin with, what did you think about the chapter?
I wasn't. I was disappointed. I thought the analysis was both somewhat derivative and not very deeply researched, and missed some key points, which I hope we can talk about. I think he's right about the decline of the middle class. That's not exactly a news flash, but as to what he means by the middle class, what he sees as the sources, or at least the sources he's willing to talk about, that's a different matter. His analysis is, as I say, interesting, not very original. He sees the hollowing out as largely a product of the steady decline of American manufacturing, of American economic competitiveness, and he gets into the next chapter about the failures of American education, but that's part of the picture, certainly in this chapter as well. And those things are all true. And indeed, to the extent, he has a very interesting interview with a guy who specializes in the recycling of scrap metal, and a very boisterous, interesting figure, a real American original. And I liked that. I think a lot of his color in the book sort of fails, but this is very good. And the emphasis there is on the fact that even to survive, manufacturing has to make use of increasing the robotics, and therefore not doing anything to help the immediate unemployment problem by creating jobs in any direct way. So all of these things are true, it seems to me. It raises important questions, but it doesn't answer them. I think this is particularly egregious in the next chapter on education, where he lays out all of these alternatives and said, well, whatever the cause is, something must be done. And then he never suggests anything to be done. So there's a paucity of plausible solutions here. A lot of impatience with the refractoriness of American political culture, the fact that we couldn't pass what in his mind was an acceptable health care bill because of our political culture. That's an observation rather than a diagnosis. It is really not offering us a solution. So I did find it a disappointing book in that regard. There are parts of it that are extremely well written. Yeah. I'll say that.
Yeah, could you touch on any idea that he brought up that you think is very important to this discussion?
Yeah, I think economic competitiveness is extremely important, and I have my doubts, and I think he does too, about whether industrial policy is the way to do it. I mean, we've seen a small glimpse of this in the Obama administration's Green Jobs Initiative, which hasn't really produced anything except some scandals. It's very hard for government to jumpstart these things. But economic growth is essential to solving the problems of the middle class, to creating opportunity for the middle class, and I think he recognizes that. So I give him credit for recognizing there are economic issues that are part of the problem of the hollowing out of the middle class, but they're not all of the problem, and the other things he doesn't talk about.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on that? So if you were to write this chapter, kind of what would be some of the things you would touch, and do you have any possible solutions to this?
Well, I think one of the gaping holes here is any kind of discussion of the the way in, and these are ultimately sort of values issues or moral issues, if you will. That word, I don't know about the word, but let's say values. And that is, you know, the middle class has always been a designation that didn't just refer to a sort of economic ranking, but to a certain set of values, industriousness, orientation towards work, towards savings, towards diligence, you know, towards opportunity and seizing on opportunities, being self-starting, et cetera, et cetera. You know, what sometimes are called bourgeois virtues. This is how you get ahead in the world. This is how you create savings and build a better life. And this also it relates to families. Families are economic units in which have the purpose of the nurture of children, but are also for the purpose of building wealth and economic stability for the sake of families, for the children and families. We're losing an awful lot of this in our middle class. We, just to start with the loss of the ethic of work. If you look at, there's a very interesting statistic that to the effect that adults over the age of 16 are either working or looking for work at the lowest rate since the 1970s, and it's plummeted from 66, almost 67% in 2007 to 62% now in the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, predicting that it will go below 60 in the 2020s if all things continue, which of course they never do. But the trend line is very ominous, and it suggests something more than the unavailability of work. It suggests a kind of movement away from a culture of work, a culture founded on that notion. So, and family formation is down. I just saw today the Pew Charitable Trust have come out with a study that marriages and family formation are at a low point. They're continuing to drop. These things are ominous signs, particularly when you look at the more vulnerable members of our society. The thing that just gives me chills every time I look at it is the out of wedlock birth statistics for African Americans. Pushing up towards 80%. This is a perilous statistic for the African American community in particular, but for everybody, because there's simply no getting around the fact that an intact family is the best engine of economic stability and an improvement of one's economic lot in life. I mean, common sense tells you this, but also social scientists who tend not to specialize in common sense confirm it. So he doesn't talk about any of these things. He doesn't talk about the decline of the family. He doesn't talk about the devastating effects of divorce, which divorce rates haven't increased, but they're fairly steady. And over time, that has a cumulative effect. So I think, and middle class values, which is almost a term you feel that you have to use scare quotes in our culture to say anything in favor of. You can't have a middle class without those. You can't have a culture of initiative, of independence, without the sort of values that can sustain that in people. So I think that Luce just misses the boat.
Thank you so much to Dr. McClay for his comments. If you have any comments or ideas of your own, please feel free to comment either on this YouTube video or on the blog that we've set up at ou.edu/onebook. You can also tweet any ideas you have at #OU1book. We hope to see you next week. Thank you.